All right, so today we're doing a review of the week. A very intense week. We were looking at this whole unit part. Okay, so let's actually talk about since the beginning of the unit. We talk about how to graph a line. So today I'm going to be working questions 47 through 58. Tomorrow you guys have a test, right? Today's Thursday, tomorrow Friday we have a test. So make sure you guys are ready for the test. The test covers the whole unit. So the whole thing, the whole packet, all of our notes, not just this week, all of our notes. So let's take a look at 47 and 48. We have to graph a line. My equation on 47, it looks like the y's by itself. And remember, y equals mx plus b. Right? It looks like the slope-intercept form. The first number that comes with the x, that's our slope. It tells me how to move. The last number, we call that the y-intercept. It tells me where to begin. So let me begin. Let me get a point. For a line, I really just need 2 points. My x value is 0 and the y value is 2, right? I'm using the numbered with the sign included. Cool, I have a point. Let me graph it. 0, 2 is right there. And then my slope, let me use this. The slope is look like a -1/2. When there's a negative sign, give the negative to either the top or the bottom. It doesn't matter. So, okay, so what do I mean with that? I could see this as a -1 over a +2, or I could see this as a +1 over a -2, right? Give the negative to the top or the bottom, not both, just one. The number in the top tells me up or down. The number at the bottom tells me left or right. If I had the negative on the top, my line will be, it says go down 1 and 2 to the right. So from the point given, down 1, 2 to the right. So I use this first slope, down 1, 2 to the right. All right, I have my 2 points. Let me just connect them with a line. I'm just gonna draw a line that goes through my points, and that's it. Now, some of you might come and say, well, what if I had to use the other equation? All right, let me start from my blue point. Go up 1 and 2 to the left. Would that give you the same line? Yeah. So it doesn't matter where the negative sign goes, top or bottom, but just one. Now, looking at question number 48, that's given in standard form, right? Because the x and the y are on the left side. So that one, let me find the standard form gives me 3 things, 2 points and the slope. My first point is, let me assume that x is equal to 0. And my second point, I'm going to assume that y is equal to 0. All right, if x equals 0, ignore the x term. So that looks like negative y is equal to 0. Use that equation to solve for y. Wouldn't we agree that y is equal to 0? So cool. Boom. Now for the other point, we're going to say let y is equal to 0. So what does that mean is ignore the y term. So that just gives me 3x is equal to 0. Solve for x. Don't we get that x is equal to 0? Now, when the 2 points is basically the same point, I will have to use my slope. Now, for the slope, I'm going to use the equation negative x, the formula negative x over y. So I'm going to use the exponent, the coefficients, the numbers in front of the letters, basically. It's just that I'm going to switch the sign on the value of x, and I'm going to switch the sign, I'm going to keep the y value. So let me have this as a -3 over a -1. Notice I switched the sign on the 3, right? But the y had a -1 in front of it. I kept it. All right, so I have my point 0, 0. My slope says go down 3, 1 to the left. I'm just going to draw a line that goes through my 2 points. That's it. Now, question 49 with inequalities. First thing is I have it in the slope-intercept form. I'm gonna look at as the y equals mx plus b, right? I'm just, even though it has an inequality sign, I'm looking at this as the equal part. So my first point is the point 0, 4. I can easily plot that point. My slope, the number in front of the x, I need it as a fraction. So this thing says go up 3, 1 to the right. Now, unfortunately, I don't have room enough to go up 3. So when that happens, let me switch the signs top and bottom. Gotta switch both. So -3, -1. So now this thing says go down 3, 1 to the left. I can do that now. Now for inequality signs, my line, it's either going to be a solid line. If it has the or equal to part of the bottom, my line is solid. But if it doesn't have the or equal to at the bottom, my line will be dotted. So in this case, it's going to be a dotted line. And I also have to shade one of the sides of the line. Now, the way I'm going to find out is I'm going to choose a point that is not on the line. Let me choose the point 0, 0. And I'm going to plug it into my equation. If it makes sense, I'm shading this side. If it doesn't make sense, I'm going to shade the other side. So basically 0 is less than 0 plus 4. That gives me that 0 is less than 4. I got to ask myself, does that make sense? 0 is less than 4? Yeah, it does make sense. So I'm going to shade this side, the side that includes the point 0, 0. Okay. What does that mean with shading? Any point that I choose here will give me a true statement, right? Like something like 0 is less than 4. Now, any point on the non-shaded side is going to give me nonsense. What do I mean with nonsense? 0 is more than 4, right? Something that makes no sense. So that's why I'm shading it. Okay. Let's take a look at question number 50. It's given to me in standard form. So 2 points. The first thing I'm going to say, well, what if x equals 0? Or what if y equals 0? So if x equals 0, ignore the y thing. And I'm going to look at that as an equal sign. So I have that 9x is equal to -20. Oh, my bad. I was ignoring the x term, right? I said ignore the x term. So this looks like 4y equals -20. I'm using the equal sign. Can we solve for y? 4y equals -20, divide both sides by 4. Then we get that y equals -5. So cool, that gives me a point. The second thing, it says, well, what if y equals 0? So now ignore that y term, and it gives me 9x equals -20. So divide both sides by 9, I get x equals -20/9, which is a decimal or a fraction, which is something I really don't want to deal with. Okay, so let's not use that point. If I had two different points, I'm done. Just draw the 2 points and you're good, right? You can connect the line. 2 points are enough. But in this case, I will also use the slope. I remember the slope is a -x/y. So -9/4. I have a point, right? 0, -5. It's -5. No, I guess Siri says -5. So 0, -5 is right there. My slope says go down 9, 4 to the right. I cannot go down 9. So I'm going to switch both signs. So +9, -4. So now this thing says go up 9. So from the point that I have, go up 9, 4 to the left. Based on my inequality sign, this is going to be dotted. Now I got to shade one side. I like to use the point 0, 0 because it's easy to work with. X equals 0, Y equals 0. So what do I mean with that? 0 plus 0. The X term, the Y term, they're both 0. 0 plus 0 is more than negative 20. So is 0 more than negative 20? If it makes sense, yeah, shade that side. If it doesn't make sense, shade the other side. In this case, it does. Right? 0 is more than a negative. I found this on the web. I see, it keeps on bothering. Okay. Let's see. I gotta shade this side. And that's it. Easy to graph. Remember, I'm working up until 58. We're reviewing the whole unit. Now here it says, write the slope-intercept form of the equation of each line. Gotta find, where do I cross the y-axis? -4, right? I'm gonna find two values. I'm gonna find my slope and I'm gonna find my y-intercept. I just found out that my y-intercept is -4. I need a second point. I'm gonna choose this point because I'm gonna do that for my slope. I'm gonna travel from one point to the other. So I started at the -4. So in this case, let me go up 6. Positive because I went up. And then it seems like I go to the left 4. Now there's a negative sign, so bring it to the front of the fraction. 6 over 4, I'm going to simplify that as 3 over 2. So my slope is a -3 over 2, and I have the y-intercept is -4. So when I have to write the slope-intercept form, I'm going to write y equals -3 backslash 2x minus 4. This is how I'm going to type it. Now question 52. I'm going to use equation. So here it says write the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line described. When I mean describe is I gave you this. I'm going to use the words parallel or perpendicular. If I use the word parallel, the slope that I want you to use is the same one. So -7 over 4. If I had a perpendicular, the slope that I want you to use is switch the sign. So positive 4 over 7. In this case, I'm going to use parallel. Perpendicular, remember, you got to switch the sign, got to flip the slope. So I have a point and a slope. The way I'm going to do this, I gave you guys, when we saw this, I gave you guys the formula. Let me remind you guys of the formula. Y minus y1 over m inside the parentheses x minus x1. The point, let me label it x1, y1, right? The x of the one point that I have, the y of the one point that I have. So let me rewrite this as y minus a -3. It's equal to -7 over 4 x minus 2. Okay, so let me rewrite this as y plus 3, right? A negative and a negative made a plus. When I distribute this, it gives me -7 over 4 times x. Now here, let me do this here at the side. -7 over 4 times a -2 over 1. I know I simplify, so this gives me positive 7 over 2. Okay. Because my last number is a fraction, I will have to deal with fractions. So let me move this +3 as a -3. But in this case, I'm going to write it as a fraction. I want a 2 at the bottom because I want common denominator. So I'm thinking, okay, 3, can I just write that as 6 over 2? Isn't 6 over 2 3? I wrote it as a fraction. So now here, let me write this as y equals -7 over 4x. Let me combine these two terms. I have to have a 2 at the bottom, right? I'm just combining the top, positive 7 and a negative 6. Isn't that positive 1? So I have y equals negative 7 over 4x plus 1/2. That's it. Question 53. Write the slope-intercept formula of the equation of the line through the two given points, right? I have 2 points. For the slope, I remember I gave you guys a formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here I label this x of the first point, y of the first point, x of the second point, y of the second point. So for my slope, I'm going to go 5 minus 1 over 3 minus a negative 3. On the top, 5 minus 1, that's just 4. At the bottom, 2 negative signs make a plus. So 3 plus 3, 6. Simplify your slope. I'm going to simplify it as 2 over 3. Now, choose a point. I know for previous lectures, I always pick the first point. Now, let me choose the second point. I'm just going to choose a point. And I'm going to use the formula we used in the previous example. I'm going to use the formula y minus y1 equals m inside parentheses x minus x1. So I have y minus 5 equals 2/3 x minus 3. So I have y minus 5 is equal to 2/3 x minus, let me do this multiplication at the side, 2 over 3 times 3 over 1. Notice I make it a fraction. The 3's cancel out. So that's 2 over 1, better known as 2. Cool, I don't have to deal with fractions at the end. So now this minus 5, let me move it over as a plus 5. Don't have to make it a fraction, good. So my answer will be y equals 2 over 3x. When I combine my like terms at the end, a negative 2 and a positive 5, that gives me a positive 3. Again, I'm working up until 58. So this is so far up until 53. Now let's go to number 58. Well, 54 in this case. We started looking at scatter plots. State if there appears to be a positive correlation, negative correlation, or no correlation. Does it look like the points are going up or down? I don't know. I cannot tell. We cannot tell, so we call this no correlation. We always read the points from left to right, okay? I cannot tell if it's going up or down. If it was going up, positive correlation. If it was going down, negative correlation. Question 55. Does it look like it's going up or down? Kind of follows this pattern, right? It's going down. So in this case, negative, because it's going down. Negative correlation. This is used a lot in statistics, so make sure you guys learn how to read this. Then also in statistics, they do something like question 56. They're going to give you some information. So in this case, economists have found that the amount of corruption in a country is correlated to the productivity of the country. So we have a corruption score, and then here we have the gross domestic product. Right, that gives me a point. I can plug it in. Each of those gives me a different point. I plug them in. I use Excel, and Excel gives me an equation, which we call the line of best fit. Now, interesting part here is there's an X and a Y value. X is this information at the bottom, the corruption score. So anything that deals with corruption score, I'm going to see it as an X. This is my Y value, right? My Y axis. So anything that has to deal with the GDP, that's the gross domestic product, per capita, money-wise. I want to see it as the y value. So I'm going to use that equation, y equals 505x minus 8,030. Let me take a look at part A. According to the model, what will be the GDP per capita of a country with a corruption score of 46? All right, this number, 46. That's either X or Y. It's the corruption score. So that's the X value. Using the function that we had, Y equals 505 times 46. Notice that I use 46 for X minus 8,030. 505 times 46 is 23,230 minus 8,030. It gives me that Y equals 15,200. It says round your answer to the nearest dollar. I don't have decimals. So there's my answer. 15,200. I'm going to ask you to just type the number on the homework. Okay, part B. Use this model of a country with a corruption score of 96. So I see a number. Gotta think, is that the X or the Y value? Remember we said anything that was corruption score, that's the X value. So using the equation, Y equals 505 times 96 minus 8,030. All right, 505 times 96 is 48,480 minus 8,030. It gives me that Y equals 40,450. My instruction says round your answer to the nearest dollar. I don't have decimals. So there's my answer. 40,450. Now my last question here says a GDP per capita of 12,000. Okay, so I see a number. Remember we said that GDP per capita was the Y value. And it even asks corresponds to what corruption score. So we don't know the corruption score according to the model. So let me rewrite this as 12,000 is equal to 505x minus 8,030. The minus 8,030, let me move it over. That's plus 8,003 and 30. I mean, so that gives me that 20,030 is equal to 505x. To solve for x, let me divide each side by 505. That's going to give me the x value. In this case, I get 39.6. Reading my instruction says, round your answer to the nearest whole number. My first decimal place is big enough, right? Big enough is 5 or more. So this 6 pushes the 9 over. Now, 39, right? We're not going to say 310, right? That's 310. The 9 is at the limit. So it actually, the 9 pushes the 3 over. So my answer will be 40. All right, 2 more questions. 57 and 58. Now this we did piecewise function. Now let me remind you guys something on the piecewise function. We talked about this before. If y equals a number, I get a horizontal line. If my highest exponent is 1, as an example, y equals 3x plus 2, I get a line going up or going down. If my highest exponent is to the second, as an example, y equals x plus 3 all squared plus 2, I get a U shape, either open up or open down. My vertex can be found. You guys notice how I found negative 3, 5. Inside the parentheses, switch the sign for the x value, and the y value, I got it from the outside with the sign included, positive 5. Same thing when it's absolute values, just the absolute values, we get a V shape, but we need the vertex as well. And then if I have a number over x, as an example, y equals 3 over x plus 2, my function will be trying to reach the x-axis. So I have a point, and I'm going to try to reach the x-axis, either going to the left or going to the right. If my point is on the left of my graph, well, it's approaching the x-axis on the left. And my point is on the right of my graph, gonna approach on the right side. Having that said, let's take a look at these last two examples. My first piece, because we call this piecewise, right? That looks like y equals 3. Y equals a number. Okay, so I know that should look like a horizontal line. The values of x I'm going to choose are -1 and anything less than -1, right? It says x is less than -1. So how about -2? Because the function is y equals 3, the y value is always 3. My first point, based on the inequality sign, is an open circle, right? It doesn't have the or equal to part. So it's an open circle. So let me do my point -1, 3. Open circle. And my other point, -2, 3, is just a point. I'm going to start at the open circle and go through the point. I know some of you guys might be like, why 3 lines and not just one graph? Because we're in algebra 2. Okay, now my second equation, my second piece, I'm looking at this as y equals -3. Right, y equals a number. I expect a horizontal line. The values of x I'm going to choose are -1 and +4 because my x goes from -1 to +4. Right, the y value is -3. In this case, is -3 in both cases, right? Because y equals -3. My first point, it's a closed circle. So -1, -3, it's a closed circle. My other point, it's an open circle. 4, -3 is an open circle. I connect my points, boom. I expected a horizontal line. The third piece now, this looks like y equals -x plus 2. The highest exponent is 1, so I expect a line. The values of x I'm going to choose are 4, because I see x is greater or equal to 4. So 4, something greater. How about 5? If x equals 4, right, -x plus 2, that gives me -2, right? -4 plus 2. Now, if x equals 5, that gives me -3. Because remember, I went -x plus 2. All right, my first point is a closed circle. So 4, -2 is a closed circle. My second point, 5, -3, is just a point. I start at the closed circle and go through the point. Let me do a better graph right there. That's it. All right, let's take a look at 58. My first piece, 1 over x. So this looks like y is equal to 1 over x. The x is at the bottom. Remember, this is when the graph is trying to reach the x-axis. I'm going to choose, well, what if x equals -3? Because I have to choose x less than -3. So this gives me as a 1 over a -3, which is a -1/3. Based on the inequality sign, it's an open circle. So -3, -1/3. Okay, let me zoom in really close in here. -3, -1/3 is about there. It's trying to approach the x-axis, so something like that. Okay, so that was the first piece. Remember, we call this piecewise. My second piece is right here. I'm looking at this as the equation y equals 4 minus, some other fact, let me write this as x minus 0 all squared. Right? X is x minus 0. Okay, so why did I do that for? Because the highest exponent is 2, so I expect a U shape. My vertex is the point 0, 4. Remember, I got to switch the sign and 4. So that's where that's the vertex of my U shape. The x values I'm going to choose are -3 and +3. I get that from here. All right, so if x equals -3, remember I'm looking at, let me rewrite this again as 4 minus x squared. I just wrote the x minus 0 just so we could see that vertex. But let me rewrite that as 4 minus x squared. If x equals -3, then we get that as 4 minus 9. 4 minus 9 is a -5. So cool, that gives me that point. Now what if x equals 3? Remember, I have to do exponents, so don't I get 4 minus 9 again? So then I get -5. So let me see. Let me erase this real quick. So points that I have. According to my equation, according to the inequality sign, my first one, the one where x equals -3, gonna be a closed circle. -3, -5. That's about here. The other point where x equals +3, 3, -5. That's also a closed circle. My vertex is the point 0, 4. That's in between there. So it looks like a U shape. Where my vertex is 0, 4. All right, let's take a look at the last piece. Let me break this up. This looks like y equals negative absolute value of x. I'm going to choose 3 for x, and it says x is greater than 3. So something like 4. My vertex is the point 0, 0. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use my vertex because x has to be more than 3. So I cannot choose x equals 0, right? Has to be more than 3. So even though this looks like a V shape, because I don't have the vertex, it's only going to look like a line. So if x equals 3, then I have the negative absolute value of 3. The inside of the absolute value is +3, but because of the negative sign outside, I get -3. Now, if x equals 4, negative absolute value of 4, because the negative sign on the outside, I get -4. So this gives me, my first point is 3, -3. According to the inequality sign, is an open circle. So 3, -3, open circle. The point 4, -4 is just the point. I start at the open circle, go through the point. And that's it. Make sure you guys are good with this because you have a test this Friday. The test covers the whole unit. So if you have any questions, let me know.